Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about Donald Trump's indictment, or I should say the indictment that was filed in the Eastern District of Virginia by complete ingenue, inexperienced baby U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan against Letitia James, the New York AG. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the merits, and then I'll explain a little more why I'm only talking about them briefly. But they're a little confusing because there's been a kind of switch within the Department of Justice. We had heard through leaks of what they were looking at, and it had to do with contrasting treatments of two different real estate properties. They switched on that, and they are now the subject of the indictment is a single property in Norfolk. It cost $139,000. I think the average home in this country is like $350,000. It's on the edge of Norfolk, so it's nothing luxurious. The allegations of the Department of Justice is when she took out a loan to finance the property, she said, it's going to be my secondary residence. I'm not going to use it for rental income. And at least they say she did use it for rental income, among other things, letting a family of three stay there and pay rent. And they think that her taxes so reflect. Let me just say that, so even on these facts, it's more than a little unclear. She has come out very strongly, although in a strong kind of calm statement, like Comey. Obviously, she was ready for this and said the charges are garbage on the facts. I told them other times what was clear. You have the DOJ and actually, says James, and there's good reason to think this, in the person of, yes, Lindsay Halligan, the former insurance lawyer who Trump installed after Eric Siebert, his previous choice, wouldn't do his bidding of indicting unmeritorious cases. So yes, it's she, but also we're told reliably that the real force, especially as it comes to Tish James, is one, Ed Martin, who couldn't be confirmed to be the D.C. U.S. attorney, who seems to be a political hack of the first order, and who really, seems to be influential, especially in the James case. Kind of a big revelation just happened this morning on CNN. Kirsten Holmes, who's going to be actually a guest on the podcast Talking Feds that we're taping today, says that Halligan didn't consult with Maine Justice. That would be the Attorney General and Todd Blanche. If that were so, it'd be a head-spinning fact and omission. Almost couldn't be dereliction. Almost seems to me has to be strategic. But anyway, so that's the claim. And there's another person just to let you know about in terms of the scorecard lineup of the case, and that would be Tish James's grand niece, a young woman whom Tish James says she let stay there because she needed a place to stay. But it's part of a narrative of secondary residence, whether Tish used it or not. That's the idea. Okay. I think, in contrast to Comey, we're learning more facts. It strikes me as not nearly as clear as in the Comey case that these charges are groundless. However, the important point is not whether there's something to them. The important point under the law, under the Constitution, under everything we know were they actually motivated and pushed by Trump for political retribution? If that's the case, if you look at the test for selective prosecution, it doesn't turn in any way on the charges being unprovable, strong, weak, or the like. If you bring a charge against someone and you're really trying to settle scores with an enemy, that's grounds to throw it out, period. And it's also a violation of the Constitution. And it's one more thing. We were talking early on about norms and why they matter so much. Nothing like this could have ever happened before because the norm was so strong. No communication between the White House and the Department of Justice on any pending case, any actual case, as opposed to broad policy issues. So the whole thing, including the Trump, what's going to be a big defense exhibit, the Trump, what he thought was an email private to Pam Bondi. Apparently, that's a detail that also has just been confirmed, but said, indict my enemies and do it now, with no thought about what the charges were and the like. Indeed, these first charges were really just completely dredged up by a Trumpy who has come in to handle the mortgage beat. We know that 3 members of the cabinet have similar kinds of things. They haven't said anything about it, etc. Here's another thing we know about the charges on the merits that matter. The total loss here, so under their theory, she was able to get somewhat better rate to use this as a secondary residence than she would to use it as rental property. And under their calculation, the advantage to her and the loss to banks who might have charged her more was a little under $19,000. I am here to tell you, U.S. Attorney's offices have prosecutorial guidelines. They're actually kind of secret. You have you're a rookie there. A case comes in. You want to see if you would consider it. You look on the guidelines. Oh, fraud, if and only if more than $500,000 loss. Guns, if and only if, etc. They're actually kind of top secret documents because you don't want the community to know that U.S. Attorney's Office won't touch it unless it's more than X. It's almost like an invitation to do X minus 1, right? But anyway, $19,000 in loss is like picayune and nothing anywhere you go. I mean, it's certainly got to be that in EDVA, any place I've ever worked. And I'm betting it's the same in Bismarck, North Dakota, or anywhere. That is just chump change. So, and that fact tends to go to proof that I think is already very strong that why are they doing this? Not because of the merits in any way, even assuming, and I just want to stress here, we just don't know in the same way we do with Comey, but even assuming they can prove this penny ante 18 grand case, what the law wants to know is, were they truly indicted because of an effort at political retribution by Trump? And that's illegal even for a solid case. So in that sense, that's why I say James is sort of Comey 2.0 here. So she made this long, pretty composed, it's all retribution. We're going to fight claim against Trump. The word on the street is she'll be arraigned. Remember, like Comey, the first thing that happens after you're indicted, you show up and are told the charges and do you know them, etc. With her very fine lawyer, Abby Lowell, maybe the premier criminal defense lawyer in Washington, who actually left his firm to be doing some of God's work here and representing people who have been unfairly accused. So we expect her to be arraigned in within 10 days, maybe a little less. And the same thing here as in the Comey case, we have a rocket docket, so they generally move things more quickly. In the Comey case yesterday, Judge Nachmanoff said, I'm not going to let you drag this out, DOJ, and don't come to me with certain confidential information and the like. We're going to move this with dispatch. Comey already said through his lawyer, they're going to try to dismiss it because of selective prosecution and also because Halligan's appointment seems to have been improper. I was really exercised by this Comey stuff, and I wrote a different piece about it every day last week. And if you go back to the Tuesday piece called Dismiss This, you'll see my laying out my predicting accurately, hooray for me, but also laying out the analysis for both selective prosecution and this pretty strong claim, it seems to me, that we can also expect Abby Lowell to bring, saying that she was improperly appointed. Now, it's a better claim for Comey, because remember, they indicted him as the statute of limitations was running out, and now it is too late. But for James, possibly, if it's granted, they still have a way of rehabilitating the case. We will see. Nevertheless, the two cases are basically peas in a pod. That pod is called selective or reprisal prosecutions. And the evidence might be a little different. On the other hand, I think the list of clear desire to take revenge on Tish James is stronger even than against Comey. He's just been railing on her, forever. From the beginning, given the big cases she brought against him. So that's what we're going to have. And if the courts see this right, they will view it through the same lens, whether or not there's any kind of technical accuracy to charges that would never, and I mean never, have been brought in any U.S. attorney's office, and were patently brought for unconstitutional reasons that if the court so finds, the case got to get thrown out. Those reasons being desire for retribution from Donald Trump to Tish James. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.